Let's drive our blade project all the way to the end, all the way to the renderer. So let's do the texturing now. We're in Substance Spinner, right? We have baked our normal map. Now it's time to move on, actually do the texturing. Okay. Cool. So in the texturing process, basically in Substance Spinner, it's more like a procedural approach. So we do most of the texturing using actually not a painting way. Although it's called Substance Spinner, it's not painting that much oftentimes. So I'm gonna start with the blade part. It's gonna be a metal. So I'm gonna choose one of the metal things. I'm gonna maybe try this smart material called Steel Rust. This one. Then move it to the top. And I don't even need that layer, so I'm gonna delete it. Now look at the result. There are a few things I don't like. One of the things is that maybe the scratch is just a little bit more too much. It's not as clean as I want it. And also this, I don't know what that is, like dirt or something, that is all over the places. So that's not what I want either. So I'm gonna tweak those two things. So before I do that, I also wanted to assign this particular material to just the blade and maybe the back of the blade, those two parts. Luckily we have done the ID map in ZBrush using polypaint. When we're baking that, the ID will be baked on our model. So right click here, we can go to add a mask with color selection, and then we can go pick color in the properties and pick one here. So I'm gonna go pick this orange and pick one more and one more here on this purple one. So now we are assigning the material only on those three portions of the model. Cool. So let's go ahead and tweak what's going on inside. Let's take a look. I'm going to turn them all off so that I can understand them one by one. So we started with the base metal, and it's always fine. It's not that exciting, just the base color. And then moving on, we have the metal scratches, which is going to be the scratch. I have no problem with it. Maybe just a little bit too noisy. So let's see what is controlling it. Underneath the actual color is just basically a different solid material, a fill layer, but underneath the mask, that's when it starts to have these variations. This mask actually is used to blend the base metal and the metal scratch, blend those two together using this mask. The mask is being generated actually by this grunge map. Okay. And so let me change the balance and see how that does. It's basically changing like how much we're showing up on the top layer. So I'm going to say maybe a little bit more. I don't really want it to see a lot of the original piece. I want it to be more like a shiny metal with some detail, some like rusted or those rough part, but most of the parts are more shiny. So that's basically what I want. Maybe just lower that slightly a little bit. Okay, and maybe not as shiny as this. I'm gonna lower it down, go back to this fill layers color. I'm gonna go to the metalness part or metallic part and drag that down just a little, and also roughness go up just a little. Okay, holding down shift and drag to change the lighting direction so I can take a look at the result. Now with that there, I'm gonna go back to the mask again. Maybe I can have a little bit more here now. So it's like a tweaking back and forth. And see what you can, what you're really liking eventually. All right, cool. So maybe it's just a little bit lesser. All right. Now moving on to the edges. Those are the edges that is actually, let's take a look. We have different color and different roughness on the edge, but more importantly, the head is going down just a little bit. Can control how much you go. I guess that's a good number. And let's see what is controlling it. There is a mask also underneath it, and this time it's using a generator. The generator is using a combination of the level, contrast, and damage intensity, and from a preset which is, generating scratches, and it's outdated. It's interesting, but let's see what I can do with this smart mask. So first of all, the level detail, maybe I can shrink it in because I don't really like it to break up that much. Maybe just a little bit. So that's too much to me. I'm gonna shrink it in a little bit more. Alright. Now damage intensity. I can change that to take a look at the result. You can see this is basically a different texture on it. Now you cannot get in and tweak those things because they are like a fixed. The internal things are encapsulated by only those 3 sliders. That's all you can do to tweak it. So damage intensity, I'm gonna lower that down to something lower, and contrast. See, maybe make it just a little bit sharper. Okay. Alright. And moving on, we have the rest. Now let's see what this guy does. This is actually the messy part that I want to get rid of. So let's see. I still want them, but I don't want them to be randomly applied across its entire surface. I kind of want them to be like dust in those concave areas. So here, I'm gonna actually just delete this mask they're using now. I'm gonna redo it. Right click on this guy. Oops, not the edge, sorry. Not the edge, the rust. Click on the mask editor. Close this guy to kick it out. I'm gonna do it myself. Right click, add a generator, and grab this guy, go to generator. I'm gonna choose its mask editor. Okay. Now that's the one it was having before, but this time I'm just recreating it myself. Now if you alt click on this mask, you can take a look at the current mask it's generating. So again, I want them to be happening on the concave area, so I don't want this, right? I want probably the opposite or even more different. So I'm gonna go select on this guy, select this generator. I'm gonna go down to the settings. You can see we have a lot of settings. So let's close those. You can see that you have 2 sections, a image input, which have 2 texture input and other base textures we baked. You can also put in a macro normal and macro hat to have secondary details. So that's the image. So now we only have the baked textures. Under these parameters, we have a bunch of global controls, like global invert to invert it, global blur to blur it, global balance to move all the colors up and down. Global contrast is basically the contrast. Those are the globals. And after that, you have texture and texture 2. Texture and texture 2 are the settings of the texture and texture 2 or texture secondary texture input. For now, we don't have any texture, and those 2, you can see also this one, texture and texture 2, their sliders are off, so they're not doing anything. Moving down, we have ambient occlusion, not doing anything. We have curvature, which is does something here. So if I slide that all the way down to 0, you can see it's not doing anything anymore. And we have worst space normal, position, and thickness, all those things that you can use to generate mask. Okay, again, those things, ambient occlusion, curvature, worst space normal, position gradient, and thickness, and also texture 1, texture 2, they're based on the texture input. Okay. So that's basically how this generator works. Go to the parameters. We're gonna go focus on the curvature that we were having before. Let me drag it all the way up. And I open this curvature here now, and then you can see it has a bunch of sliders. You have also have this blend mode and the mode. Blend mode is how it blends with other portions. We have again ambient occlusion, curvature, worst space, position, thickness, texture 1, and texture 2. The blend modes exist on all of them. Like texture 2, you have overlay as blend mode. Ambient occlusion, you have multiplication, and worst space normal, you have linear dodge. As you can see now, they are being blended and composed together to generate the final result. And for now, we only have curvature on. Okay, so let's open it. The curvature linear dodge, I guess it's fine for now. And let's see, the mode is edges, which basically is trying to extract the edge as the showing up part. Okay, so I want the concave area, so I'm going to click on there and change that to cavities. That's going to go give me actually the result I want, more or less. Okay, now we have a bunch of sliders down here, a lot of sliders, but don't get intimidated by those. Let's just drag them all down. Saving. Okay, now it's saved. Let me drag those all down. As you can see, it's black. Let's take a look at what they are. Big is a big chunk of white and black color. Huge is even more blurry than that, and large, you can see it's a little bit more, having a little bit more definition, and medium is having a little bit more, and soft, and then fun, and then sharp. Now you see what they are, right? They're basically bigger and smaller details. Okay, so I'm gonna drag the sharp up, drag the fun up, drag the soft up, and maybe the medium up a little bit more, so that I have basically filling in most of the places there. Let's hit M button in the viewport and take a look at the result I'm getting. Okay. Now you can see I'm redefining where those rust area appears, which is only on those concave areas. Okay. Now just to make it easier to see, I'm gonna go back to the top, and the global balance, I'm gonna go up, so you can see I'm having more. Anyway. So here, let me all click on this alpha. You can see this is what we're getting, but I'm thinking maybe this is too generic. I want to break this up a little bit more. So I'm gonna go select this mask editor. Now, like what I mentioned earlier, right? We have curvature and curvature only for now, but we can have others like animal occlusion, texture 2. So I'm gonna use texture here to break up my setup here. So I wanted to have like variations inside using a texture to break it up. So going down to the image inputs, I'm going to import a texture by clicking on it, and search for grunge, which I already have something there before. So search for grunge, and you go down, pick one. So I'm going to try this one, grunge 007, right? And you can see it's not doing anything. So let's take a look at why. First of all, the texture is turned off, so let's turn texture 1 up to 1. Still not very visible. Let's take a look at why. So open that, we can see the blending mode is overlay, and that's why it's not really showing up. So I'm gonna change that to multiplication. Now you can see it's really doing something, right? And again, the scale is the size of that. And you can tweak contrasts, you can tweak the brightness of this entire thing. Let's hit M button to actually get everything back. Now you can see now I'm using this texture to really break up the mask I'm having. So let's see, make this bigger chunks. Alright, cool. So I just want a subtle dust on those concave areas. So I'm pretty happy with it. Maybe just a little bit more contrast even. Okay. Can take a look at the alpha. Alright. Maybe I can break up more. So let's take a look. This is now our back and forth now to tweak those things. Maybe just something here, some detail here in the middle to break it up. Let's go back to the material. As you can see, it's cutting out there, it's cutting out there, and leaving only those areas to have some cluster of dusts happening. And maybe I can change the global balance just to have a little bit more over there to have this contrast. So I have some patches of dusted areas. Alright, cool. It's not gonna be super visible. I don't really want them to be, right? And you have this sharpness to just make them a little bit more sharper, and that's basically how this entire smart material works. As you can see, it's a group of different materials, and you can basically manually build those things if you wanted to. Alright, so that's gonna be the first tutorial. Okay. And in the next one, we're gonna move on to block out maybe other parts, and then we can talk about some painting ways to adding more human touch. Alright, see you next time.